Hello, hello, what is up, what is good? Do y'all know the phrase better late than never? We're gonna be pushing the limits of that phrase, because man, let me tell you, uh, delaying this thing, putting this off over and over again, this video, has been like a lead balloon hanging over my head. So many other things I felt like I couldn't work on until I had finished this, but then this in turn I didn't finish because there was various anime that I wanted to include on it that I just wasn't in the mood to watch or didn't have time to watch. And it's not like I'm beating myself up about it really. Like, it has been a very busy time for me. And when I have moments of free time, there's a lot of other kind of conflicting priorities or just wanting to relax and do nothing. I think that's all very valid. But I realized at a certain point, like, man, I don't think I'm going to get a chance to watch these shows. And in turn, it's making me put off getting caught up on the current season of anime, which is turning out to be a really fantastic season. And I want to watch stuff with my anime club. But again, just kind of like conflicting schedules and having this long kind of domino sequence of priorities in my head that really isn't actually based on anything. Um, it was all just kind of like hanging around this linchpin of finishing this video, which is a whopping like 2.5 months late, 2.5 months after the season finished. But you know what? Like, screw it. Better late than never. We're getting to it now. I'm declaring 2024 anime bankruptcy. There's various other shows I did really want to watch and I did want to talk about, but I just wasn't in the mood to get there. And if I'm not in the mood to watch it, then what's the point? Like, I'm not going to enjoy myself if I'm just forcing myself to watch it for the sake of making a video. I'm not going to be as excited to talk about it. So that's just how it is. We're moving on. We still got a lot of shows to talk about. The fall 2024 season was excellent, packed with good stuff. Let's get into it. I will offer this disclaimer as well. In the past, we've gone on some pretty deep dives into shows. We've talked about individual series for upwards of like an hour, hour and a half. That's not happening this time. I just needed to get through this. I needed to get it off my plate. So I restricted myself to one slide per show. We're going to keep it relatively short and sweet this time, and you're probably looking at the runtime and going, right. But relatively, that's the key word. Okay, first we're going to go through the obligatory list of stuff that I didn't watch, or things that I was watching and that I didn't finish, or stuff that we're going to talk about next season because it's a extended two-core type affair. Orb is such a two-core series. We've been watching this in Anime Club. Anime Club. They're still watching it. I'm quite behind. But I was really, really enjoying this one. Very rare, unique subject matter for an anime. A dramatized historical look at Copernicus and the discovery of geocentrism and the mapping of the orbits of the planets. Really fascinating stuff while also being very gritty and tense. um, because this is the time of the church stamping out all ideas of heliocentrism, reinforcing only geocentrism as, the canonical theory of the church. Anything contrary, you're a heretic, you're going to get tortured. So yeah, pretty intense, pretty violent at times. But with this like very core theme of scientific endeavors, of passing the torch of knowledge. There's a really, really good 3 Blue 1 Brown video where him and legendary polymath Terrence Tao talk about the cosmological ladder, the ability to measure further and larger celestial objects from Earth using really interesting mathematical techniques and deductions based on the few things that you can estimate just as a human being standing on the surface. So if you like the show or you like that idea, check out the video, check out the show, check out the manga. Seems good. I'll get caught up eventually. 365 Days to the Wedding. This is a manga by the creator of Tagwak, The World God Only Knows. We watched one episode of it, and it was actually pretty cute. Good premise, good characters, fun animation. But we just didn't have time to put it in the schedule. Same with this one. We watched the first episode. The premise is kind of, but it's surprisingly wholesome. It really kind of tackles this bizarre scenario where the wife is reincarnated as an elementary school student, kind of taking a holistic look at it because she still does live with her reincarnation family. She goes to school, she has a normal kid's life, but then when she gets the chance, she goes and becomes his wife again and takes care of the kid and makes them dinner and reminisces. And it's very, very bizarre, but it seems like they kind of dealt themselves that hand and then played it with a lot of grace. And as I said, a really holistic, accepting perspective that's like, let's think about how this would really go. Just crazy. Magiluminaire Magic Girls Inc. we watched the first episode of. The production was kind of especially in the big dynamic climactic action scenes. It felt like it didn't really live up to the potential. So I just started reading the manga. You can see me talk about it in my favorite manga of the decade so far video. I'm really enjoying it. Too bad the anime wasn't, up to that standard, but hopefully it got some fans for the manga or something. Same with Trillion Game. Another one that we watched the first episode of. The production was like all right, passable, but nothing really dynamic or amazing. So I just started reading the manga instead, which I am really, really enjoying. And it seems like now Viz is aiming to start simulpubbing it. They've got a huge gap of chapters that I am not caught up with, that haven't been scanlated or anything. But hopefully they'll fill in that gap and I'll be able to read the whole series and get caught up. The Blue Box anime, I think, ended up being a 2-core, so it might still be running. But this is another manga that I was really, really enjoying as part of my project of reading everything in Jump. The anime seemed fine. We watched one episode again. The premise comes across as like really corny and stupid in the first episode. And you just kind of got to take it on faith from me, who would never steer you wrong, that this is in fact not a stupid series, but a really lovely, really emotionally intelligent, really deep, introspective, but also compelling and action-packed sports rom-com fusion series. I think it's one of the best rom-coms that Jump has ever run. Certainly the least stupid rom-com that Jump has ever run. I'm really, really enjoying it. I hope the anime's been good too. This was one of those shows that I was like, okay, well, I don't want to make the anime review video until I watch this. And then I just never felt like watching it. I think because I know it's like super freaking heavy. I've read the manga now. I know how distressing this is gonna get. I wasn't like eager to relive some of the stuff that I am pretty sure will be contained in these episodes. So it's all Paru Sensei's fault that this video is so late. But yeah, Beastars is fantastic. I love all of Paru Sensei's work. She has 2 series going right now that are both amazing. The Sonda anime is coming. She just keeps killing it. I think she's one of the best mangaka working right now. So I would like to watch this eventually because I think the Orange adaptation is really, really good. Like, I think the way the animals come to life through the CG animation, just the expressiveness, the performances of the VA, especially Legoshi, are just phenomenal. And there's some really crazy stuff that happens in the final arcs in Beastars. Honestly, it's like not my favorite part of the series. A lot of stuff gets just like very strange in a way that is so kind of disjoint from the series up until that point that it's hard to kind of retain your emotional investment. Some stuff starts to feel very abrupt and jumpy. But that actually makes me just want to revisit it in the anime all the more because I feel like it'll just have such a different kind of tone and pacing. It's sort of an opportunity for them to resculpt how these arcs kind of play out. Cutting things or rearranging things, who knows? I don't know how far they'll go. But I'm very curious because I think this is a pretty common sentiment, like that Beastars is a fantastic series, that even the ending is still great, but that there is some like stumbling and stuff. So I'm very, very curious. Maybe I'll wait until the entire final season comes out and then I'll watch it and we'll do like a big retrospective in whatever season video that is. And then I ended up not finishing this. which I feel really bad about. I watched like half of it. I was really enjoying it. I was really, really impressed. It felt like just the ideal adaptation of a manga that I truly love from one of my favorite mangaka of all time. So exciting to see his work get such a well done, full of love adaptation. I was so interested in the changes they were making too. There was just some sort of restructuring of plot points and stuff that so far I was like quite impressed by. It felt very sensible. It felt like it was making the series maybe a little more understandable for more people without really compromising on any of the feeling of ambiguity or mystery or just that really wonderful kind of like melancholy tone that pervades it. I have nothing but good things to say about it, but I just didn't finish it. I just was never in the mood to watch it. Again, it's like stuff that I've already read the manga. I just can't get as excited about. I guess that makes sense. But eventually I'd like to. I don't know when. It's good, man. Okay, let's talk about shows that I did watch. That was depressing. I don't know, man. It's like, you think, oh, well, it's just anime. It's like, wow, what an excruciating event to watch anime, to sit down on your freaking couch and consume audiovisual entertainment. But if you're not in the mood, you're not in the mood. This, though, is a show that I was always in the mood to watch. We watched it with Anime Club, and then on several occasions I watched episodes early with other friends because I had the opportunity to. And I also lost patience and started reading the manga ahead of the anime. That was just how much I was enjoying it. This is definitely the breakout hit, the show of the season. And I think for most audiences, this was like the show of the year. With killer production, great source material, and definitely this juggernaut OP. You know, that I think was what really ensnared the masses. Brought it to an unprecedented level of mass attention for a Science Saru show. You know, Devilman Crybaby was kind of a cult hit back in its day, and Ping Pong has developed a loyal fan base of mostly melee players. But really, this is what truly broke Science Saru into the mainstream. And as a result, again and again, I would have these conversations. I'm sure people watching had these conversations. Everybody was having this conversation going, look, there's an anime airing this season. If you want to watch a really good anime, you'll probably hear about it sooner and later. But let me tell you now, there's one scene in the first episode that's very, very uncomfortable. I've had to give that disclaimer. I've seen that disclaimer given. It is what it is. I think it's one of those things that in the manga, it's just like a few panels and it doesn't seem so horrendous or grotesque or anything. But then in the anime, because everything has such a vividness and intensity through the production, I can see why people found it very upsetting. But yeah, I think this is a conflation of demographics the likes of which we have not seen since Mob Psycho. And really, even Mob Psycho might not have hit these heights. What are we bringing together here? Manga heads. Production patricians. Those categories apply to me. Rabid shonen anime fans. People that just watch, like, Attack on Titan. And since Attack on Titan ended, they're going, oh my god, when's there going to be another good anime? You know? That's like millions of people. That's like most anime watchers in the West. They got brought in. And all these different demographics of normies, people that just don't watch anime at all, were learning about this show in think pieces, through word of mouth. It was just breaking through these sort of critical barriers such that people that really are not like seasonal anime consumers in the slightest were now watching the show week by week. It's crazy. It may never have happened before to this extent that those groups got brought together so fervently. It's really such a great feeling. It hit me. I was out for dinner with some friends. These are like fairly nerdy friends and fairly like kind of cultured, for lack of a better word, people. Like they're freaking yogurt. That watch like critically acclaimed TV and movies and stuff and kind of have their finger on the zeitgeist when it comes to popular critically acclaimed media and stuff. And one of these friends was like, yeah, I've been watching this anime, Dandadan. Have you heard of it? Well, I don't even think he said, "Have you heard of it?" He assumed that I had heard of it. My reputation precedes me. I don't hide my power level around my friends. And honestly, I don't really know how he'd heard about it, but it didn't even surprise me that much. I was just like, hell yeah, you're watching Dandadan. I know what's up. You know what's up. Maybe you saw the OP on YouTube. Who knows? I felt like genuinely proud. Not just because, you know, I've been watching Science Saru shows for like over a decade now. Not just because I have a friend that worked on Dandadan, that works on Science Saru shows. But just this kind of feeling of like, okay, now you're starting to understand. Now you get it. Anime has never been more mainstream, sure, but the stuff that gets the widest attention is still, even when it's good, I don't think it's that representative of what makes anime so special to me. It's like stuff that's just sort of generically good, that's like good in any medium. Whereas Dandadan is like truly like an anime. And I was like, yeah. You see now? You see what I like about this so much? So what exactly made this crossover so well? What was the formula that cooked so good here? I think you kind of start off with most of the arcs, most of the climaxes, the general structure of this thing is a battle shonen, right? We have our ragtag group of heroes, various monstrous things appear, and then they end up fighting them. That's as typical as it gets. What I really like here is that it's a very modern kind of battle shonen where it's not just like a succession of stronger robots or martial arts dudes. There's nothing really generic. There's nothing predictable. In one instance, they're fighting yokai. Next, they're fighting aliens. Then they're fighting kaiju. Then they're fighting the Loch Ness Monster. Just that sort of freedom, I think, is very infectious to people. And it's an easy thing to grasp that, okay, everything is on the table. The first episode establishes both aliens and spirits are real. And not just those two things, but it instantly clues you in that, like, everything is real. Everything could happen. But where so many battle shonen get lost in the sauce and appeal only to battle shonen readers and have, like, a million rules and mechanics and power hierarchies, and everything is all around kind of this, like, insane confluence of power between different factions, and you know, you put all of kind of the thinking and progress and all the feeling of like development and significance into the fights, into that progression, which I think is a big turnoff for a lot of people. You know, to be told, oh well, you have a power rating of 357. That makes you A tier. That gives you access to these skills. You need to train. There needs to be a training arc where you go and learn this skill from this person who's S tier. And it's like, that isn't what's actually really engaging to most people. Most people just kind of want the fights. And I think for so long now, Battle Shonen has just kind of like turned inwards and just appealed more and more to Battle Shonen fans that are already like building those expectations. Here, all of the progress and significance and stuff happens in the other genre that this comprises, which is the rom-com. The significant moments are when they make a little more progress towards truly expressing their feelings for one another, when they make a little more progress in intimacy and closeness. That's so graspable. That's so exciting and understandable for anyone and everyone. It's something that's actually like relatable. I think that's brilliant. I think that's something that is like so clearly brilliant about the manga, that has been a major part of why this manga was a success. I think the anime captures it really well too. The production, as I've praised to high heavens before, has this very bold, very ambitious cinematic sequencing, where they feel totally free to go into a totally different cinematic mode. Like the Acro Silky flashback is like the very obvious, very now famous example that just kind of resonated with everyone so deeply, so immediately, such a huge emotional impact. The ability to like go into those modes and signal so quickly. Now we're doing something different. Now the series is in a mode that you haven't seen before. You are about to embark on this emotional roller coaster for the next 5 minutes. Buckle up. I think that too is just so immediately graspable. Something that, you know, is what makes like movies work. But balanced too with very memey moments, joke scenes, gags, downtime, stuff in between these gigantic sequences. That they aim for sort of like a catchiness, a feeling of iconicness, that really worked. You know, I saw so many memes about various scenes of this show, and they express all of this through the actual animation stuff, through two kind of modes where some stuff is like very obviously impressive, like a lot of the fight scenes, the explosions, a lot of these really like the climaxes of these cinematic moments, stuff that is obviously impressive even to somebody who's not really into anime, and go, wow, that clearly was a masterwork. But then all of the other scenes, that are a lot more subtle, a lot more low key, that don't really have big flashy things going on, are just like very full of small nuanced things that just kind of make the show more lively, more rich. Things that I don't really expect most people to notice per se. Probably a lot of things that even I didn't notice. But just sort of like maintain a feeling of impressiveness, even if you aren't picking up on exactly all of the minute things being done during one of these like small slice of life interludes. You're like, ooh, this all just feels good. And I think this can be applied to like Ghibli movies as well. I think Ghibli movies have the same sort of flowing Sakuga into just low-key good animation mode. And that's what really gets people. That's what gets people to have never really thought about the idea of animation quality before to realize, ooh, I'm watching high quality animation right now. All right, and here's our next step. Loyal Kitsu YouTube channel soldiers. Find 3 people you know that watch Dandadan. Tell them, hey, there's gonna be a new show soon. It's gonna be just as good as Dandadan. It's called Sanda. Let's all watch Sanda. Alright, I'll give this thing a... Oh, look, I can get beamed up too. I'll give this thing a 9.5. Really enjoyed Dandadan. Now we'll talk about something I enjoyed a lot less. Uzumaki. Like, come on, folks. Can we just stop? There is a curse beyond all other curses, beyond all other maladies and horrors in Junji Ito manga. The true terror is this. You just can't adapt his work into anime. It just won't work. It fails again and again. And yeah, there's a lot to explain the failure this time. It had a very long and troubled development history. It was announced like in 2018, I think, and then there was some huge internal breakdown where a huge chunk of the production team got laid off and replaced, and that explains the very significant, very noticeable drop in animation quality between episodes 1 and 2. This was another show that a lot of people who don't watch anime were watching, and it was like a real like first time type scenario where everyone started complaining that the animation got worse after episode 1. And it's like, baby, that's every anime. But no, this was beyond the pale. This was a true train wreck. You can read the whole story online. It seems like executive meddling, tale as old as time, many such cases, whatever. You can point to the first episode, longingly think, we were so close, we were right there. They just needed to make 3 more episodes that were that good. What could have been? We could have had it all. We could have succeeded in a Junji Ito adaptation of his most famous work. But, like, I don't think so. Here's my hot take. The first episode was good. I think they did a good job. But it wasn't, like, mind-blowingly good. Like, it was... I just think it's just not gonna work. What they should have done is just made like a very small short that just had a few really iconic scenes disconnected and was like 5 minutes long total. Uh, Showing off this animation style that they came up with to depict this series, which I think is really good and really impressive. But I think no matter what, even if you had, miraculously smooth sailing through the entire adaptation, I think it was doomed. See, the thing is, Junji Ito is like pretty funny, right? Like I don't know, maybe I'm gonna come across as psychopathic here, but comedy is a major component of a lot of his works, and it's kind of like you get to this very surreal point where something so grotesque has appeared, and you're forced to confront it, and it's equally it's so much in sort of the shock zone that it feels equal parts horror and humor. Like, you are free. You turn the page, you're confronted, you're dizzied. Like, it hits you all at once, the revelation of the new page. You are free to like contemplate it, you are free to come to terms with it, you are free to let it burrow into the crevices of your brain and freak you out and make you feel unpleasant. You are free to flip the frick past it and try to forget what you just saw, or any combination thereof, anything in between on each and every page. You're free to laugh at it. You're free to just giggle with glee at how crazy things have gotten in these surreal escalations. Like, the tone and your reaction to the tone is like private, and it's quiet. It's happening just between you and the page, with no active pushing for any one response, no deliberate framing of how you ought to feel about it based on the voice actors' performances or the music or the tone or the duration or the pacing or anything. And like, this is one of the many beautiful things about manga. This is like 101 type stuff of why manga works so well, why comics work so well. It is simply an image that you take in as a whole. You are in control of when the page turns. You are in control of what you make of that image. It is simply an image and text that you are parsing on your own. And it's like, oh man, and all of the arcs and escalations in this series, they felt so squished when being shoved like 3 at a time into episodes. It just felt so jarring and strange, and I'm not sure exactly what could have been done about it, while still maintaining traditional episode lengths. Again, I just don't think they should have done it. I just don't think it really works as anime. And for all of this, what do we get? We've sacrificed all of these wonderful qualities of manga, all of this stuff that I think really, in particular, Junji Ito's work requires. Like, so many examples. Okay, here's a couple examples. The hospital poster of the, what's it called, the cochlea in the ear, and it looks like a spiral, and you see it in the background, and then you're kind of confronted with it, and that escalating feeling of dread is all kind of within your control. And it's like you're kind of waiting for the climax, but you are in control of like when the punchline is going to come as you flip the pages. That to me is also a hysterical Kafka-esque moment of irony, where this woman has gone insane trying to eliminate spirals from her body. She's burned off all her fingertips or cut them off. Ooh, yeah, she cut them off. All sorts of horrific things she's done, shaving her head to remove the whorls of hair. And then you see this poster and you realize, oh my god, she's doomed. The spiral is inescapable. It's in there in her head. That is like funny and you kind of want to laugh, and it's like a weird cold laugh. It's a laugh of like resignation maybe, or a tension cutting laugh of anticipation. Maybe it's not really a laugh at all, but there's something that twinges in your brain around that irony, that I think isn't totally encapsulated by the feeling of dread. Whereas in the anime, just due to how things have to be presented emotionally, there's no like space for these sort of simultaneous disparate emotional reactions to happen at once. You're kind of channeled into one because of the music and the camera movement and everything, right? Do you know what I'm saying? I don't think it's that complicated. It's just like I just keep sounding like a psychopath saying that I crack up reading Junji Ito manga. But I do. There's a lot of really funny stuff. and I think it's like it's tough because when you force it into the boundaries of an anime, the stuff that's meant to be like funny, or the stuff that you'll find funny while reading the manga, when you're reading it, it doesn't detract from the horror. But when you're watching it, it kind of makes the horror feel corny, right? Like it goes from kind of two parallel reactions that you have at your own pace, studying the page and moving at your own pace, versus awkwardly shoving them together, being told it's scary when your first reaction is maybe comedic, and then the whole thing just kind of feeling nerfed in potential. But what do we get? Well, seeing the spirals move around was pretty cool. But man, yeah, like, I don't know. This in general, it just... Like, obviously I get excited when a property I like is getting adapted. Especially when it's by a studio I like or whatever. But, like, we need to get our heads out of the sand here and just acknowledge the fact that it's not always going to work. There's a lot of manga I can think of that I don't think would make good anime at all. And I think the works of Junji Ito, it's been proven now time and time again, I think falls under that category. So yeah, I don't know. Some cool imagery though. I mean, this scene was cool. There's a lot of cool scenes. Even in the later episodes, there's some cool scenes. But they're all in the manga too. Just read the manga. I'll give it a 4. Okay, so we were just shit talking this idea of adaptations. Not everything needs an adaptation. Some stuff works better as manga, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, here I am going to praise the high heavens. Not only just an adaptation of one of my all-time favorite manga, but like a double adaptation, because this has already been made into anime once, and now we are modern animeifying it via Studio Mappa or Madhouse, one of those two. Turning it into something that feels like it only could have been made in 2024 onwards. It's really the height of unnecessary, and there was some pretty valid discourse around it where people were like, what's wrong with the old anime? Like, why are we pandering and catering to people that are turned off by the fact that it's like low res, or it's in 4:3, or it has a lot of the hallmarks of anime of its era, or whatever. Moreover, why is it so de-China-fied? Why does Ranma not get to wear her China overalls anymore? I think there's some other examples too. But let's put that aside. I think there's actually quite an obvious answer there, but it's not worth getting into. But yeah, I think this is a valid question to ask. Like, with the resources and time and everything being put into this anime, you could do any number of other things. You can tell an original story, you can adapt something that hasn't been adapted yet. You could even go after a Rumiko series that hasn't been made into an anime yet. You could turn Mao into an anime or something. Why do we have to go back, just like we did with Urusei Yatsura the year before, and remake Ranma? Like, there really is no point. I think these criticisms, though, in the end, are overpowered by the fact that it's, like, really, really good. I was really, really impressed by this. Really, really happy with this. You know, I'm a trans person. Surprise. When I was a kid, I was reading a lot of manga. I got into it pretty seriously when I was 11, I guess. And one of the first series I read was Ranma. The woman my dad was dating at the time worked at the library and was able to get it for me. That opened my eyes in like five different ways. Probably the trans aspect least of all, honestly. More the fact this is really funny. This has boobs in it. I can see boobs like every chapter. That's awesome. Uh, I love the martial arts battles. Battles don't just have to be Dragon Ball Z. They can be something much more choreographed and down to earth and martial artsy. Uh, hey, why do I think turning into a girl is so compelling? Why do I keep thinking about that every single day? Why do I think about if only I could go to the cursed springs in China? And wow, this thing is long. I think this is one of the first like truly long running series I read. And even though I knew like Dragon Ball was super long and stuff, because I think I had seen it on TV before I started reading the manga, I already had like a sense of the scope. Whereas Ranma was something that just kind of came like a bolt out of the blue, changed my life in all of these ways and more, really opened my mind to the world of what manga could be, and it just kept going. Like there was just always another volume to read. It was so fun. And watching this, you know, having not read Ranma since I think I last reread it in like high school, so quite a long time. Watching this though, I felt like I could just remember everything. Like panel by panel, I could picture the original manga. And the anime though leans into this. Like a lot of the shots are recreating the exact positioning, the exact layout of different manga panels. But it was a pretty profound and powerful feeling just how much I realized I had been influenced by this series. So this is kind of like the opposite direction of Dandadan, where Dandadan kind of comes across as this kind of goofy comedy that's actually a battle series, but really it operates on the bones of a rom-com. This is a rom-com that, when you get into it, really is much more like a battle series. But once you start to notice the pattern of how the battles work, it's actually just a sitcom. This whole premise of Ranma switching from boy mode to girl mode, everyone else switching from animal form to human forms, everyone having this deep tangle of affections within themselves, crushes, secret and non-secret, reciprocated and not, love triangles, love quadrangles, and all of these things kind of playing out in this absurd mess. It's Shakespearean, or at least it's Fraserian. And I remember watching an episode and just being struck by how fun the three layers of like cascading misidentification were, and trying to convince my friends who love Frasier, that are big sitcom heads, that they should really give this a try. But then, you know, after all this stuff kind of gets shaken up, what it all boils down to, the kind of moments of confrontation where in a sitcom or in Shakespeare would just be sort of a rousing, intense speech. I know your true identity, and I am tired of being absconded by these lies, and blah 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 blah. Here they just fight it out. It's super fun martial arts fighting. Reminds me of Jackie Chan classics, where every fight has its own kind of arsenal of props that are makeshift weapons. Every fighter has so much personality in their moves and their techniques, and the sort of expressiveness they bring to the choreography, all expressed in this perfect blend of really modern like Sakuga battles, stuff that almost reminds me of like Shaft at times, with just this rapid experimentation of different filters, different palettes, different ways of depicting, but then everything just moving and flowing with this awesome choreography that isn't like overly complicated, it isn't super over the top. It really does feel like just kind of Jackie Chan style crazy martial arts. And then for the gag comedy, they kicked it old school. They kind of went back to the conventions of the original series and paid homage. You know, they definitely clearly were interested in honoring the original series. The voice acting cast is almost exactly the same. And I feel like there's a lot of very deliberate callbacks, especially in the gag comedy, to, okay, well, that's exactly how they would have done it in the 80s. And you know, I was talking about like Dandadan. Hey, they're finally watching like an anime, and that feeling great. This though is the one I really want them to watch. It's partially because it's so special to me and because it's such a classic. But I think this is like the true endearing spirit of anime. Um, Takahashi Sensei is one of the great goddesses of manga. In my mind, she only has one above her, and that's Tezuka himself. And there's no surprise that her work is getting these sorts of readaptations, these retreatments, decades and decades later, that people are still watching them, still enjoying them, that the biggest studios in the game are still interested in remaking them. Everything is cool. It's like, Dandadan is very cool and stuff, but this also has the kind of like corny classic aspects of anime. This has all this stuff that people kind of deride anime about. The cliches of anime. Everything classic. Everything is here. This is what it's all about. We'll give this a 10. Okay, now let's talk about NegiPosi Angler. Lovely, quickly, little slice of life about meme stocks and fishing. The duo you never expected before. We start with one of the most realistic depictions of the most common internet stock experiences, which is going super broke and being cast into suicidal despair because you have no money. Being in a very low place where you were so desperate as to bet your life savings on internet stocks, things that Reddit told you to buy, and then you fall even lower when they all inevitably go down. And then we segue from that into a pretty realistic depiction of fishing too. I think probably one of the most realistic depictions of fishing in anime, insofar as that it's just kind of another gamble. And that a lot of it is like chasing the same high, chasing the same fix of having your numbers go up, except this time it's fish. They don't shy away from the fact that this sort of recreational fishing is mostly weirdos and outcasts, and that there's days that are just full of disappointment. But when it hits, oh, it hits. And I think, though, what it emphasizes that there's a spectrum of gambling. That there are relatively healthy and unhealthy gamblings, beyond just the amount of money you stand to gain or lose. And the joy of fishing that it's expressed here, the feeling of community and camaraderie and achievement, learning and applying that knowledge and getting better and better. All of that is very well emphasized too. Like it's I think, again, very realistic about the broad spectrum of emotions of fishing, and maybe the less than healthy motivations that give way to ultimately a fairly healthy hobby. So this is kind of a genre of anime that is emerging, that I would call like the educational and affirming sitcom. This is kind of a new genre that is born from anime and manga, that has been refining itself bit by bit over the years, that I don't think has really caught on at all in the West, i.e. there hasn't been like a huge crossover hit that has brought this to Western attentions. And I can't really think of many Western equivalent series. Maybe the Red Green Show. So we start with the appreciation of a hobby that is extremely manifest in the common genre of cute girls doing cute things, slice of life, where you just get a bunch of high school girls who take an interest in any sort of hobby, and the entire series is just about them doing the hobby and teaching you about the hobby and having a fun, laid-back time. There are 2 that I know of about fishing. I'm sure there are more. So the idea of a fishing show that's just about fishing and teaches you how to fish is not at all a surprise. That's a classic within a classic genre. But then we sort of fuse this with an overall story arc that we see more in manga, which is this kind of affirmation journey to become a proper human being. There's lots of examples of this. Often it's a quite beloved genre where, not every single one of them is going to hit for every single person, but when it resonates with you and when you can kind of identify with the main character, this often explodes to the top of people's favorite manga. And this, again, is kind of woven into NegiPosi Angler in its main character, who's, bouncing back from rock bottom. And then you kind of have these two dynamics fusing together. And the secret sauce that I think has been more and more prevalent as of recently is to kind of write all of the dialogue and all of the banter and kind of the humorous aspect as if it was like an American live action sitcom, where there's like a bit of edge, but everything is all kind of about resolving, learning lessons, and hugging and stuff. Like that kind of sitcom. I think more and more there seems to be this sort of sensibility around character writing and stuff. I think it's like these two genres we talked about first are very oriented towards really, really likable characters, characters that you just really want to cheer for and root for. And sort of the edge that's coming in on the comedic side is like, okay, but what if we actually like made fun of these characters a bit? What if we made them a little unreasonable? What if we laughed at them on occasion? It's all coming together. And I think we're going to see more and more of this Western sitcom influence. I think we're maybe 2 years out from a manga that has the confessional interview format made famous by the American Office and adopted by countless sitcoms since, where you cut to panels of the character addressing an unseen camera. Sometimes there isn't even the pretense of some sort of documentary premise. They're just talking to you, the reader, and giving their commentary on what just happened. Honestly, it's a style that I've come to find very annoying because it's so overdone and it's often just like not funny. But I think it's something that may catch on in manga next. But yeah, I think this genre is like closing in on the perfect genre. These are three things that I really, really love. And it feels like more and more there's a deliberate effort to kind of fuse them all together into what might be the perfect genre for me. I think it just needs to be a bit meaner and a bit more like bold and dynamic characters that are even less about being likable, even less about like pleasantness. And then we could be there. We'll see. And also, this made me want to fish. Now, I've always kind of wanted to fish. I've got the worm in my brain, and I need to cast it out into the lake. I used to go as a kid fishing, but my modern adult interest is far more about eating the fish. And I'm going to do it this time. We're putting together a team. We're going to go out salmon fishing. There's like these charter experiences where they take you out in the boat and they show you what to do. This salmon season, it's going to happen. I'm going to catch and eat a salmon. I'm really, really excited. Shout out to Brad Paisley. I'm going to miss her. That right there is a 10 out of 10 song. But this is not a 10 out of 10 anime. We'll give it an 8. I think it's very solid, very good, and I'm excited about this sort of genre direction, but it's, as I said, it's not entirely there yet. Okay, let's talk about Noble Farmer Season 2. One of the GOAT mangaka coming back at it with the farming biopic Season 2. This is another like new anime genre. That is to say, a genre that was born from anime and manga. That's again being refined and invented right before our eyes. The variety show, interview, rapid fire blitz of jokes, anecdotes, fun facts, and cute moments. It's like kind of aping the format of a Japanese variety show where they have a celebrity on, and they do just kind of a series of like skits and jokes. It's not too different than like a late night show in America. Just a lot more like wacky and hyper. It's sort of taking that and putting it into the anime format and just sort of expanding the scope of what's capable or what you're capable of because of the fact that it's animated. Everything I loved about the first season is back, and more so. You can go back and watch my review of the first season if you'd like to hear more about what it is that I loved. But, you know, at the end of the first season, she'd already kind of covered all the 101s of working on a farm and what it means to run a farm, and here are the types of animals and stuff. So here we start exploring some more fertile ground, and if you know farming and you know what makes soil fertile, there is a rich, pungent scent that emerges here. We get a deeper dive into a lot of things, like the minutia of cow breeds, horse breeds, get into manure, bears, pests, the diet of a farmer, the food that they eat on a day-to-day basis. Just this kind of broadening of scope of topics. It's a blend of kind of nostalgic knowledge, things that I learned deep, deep, deep into my childhood, things that I grew up kind of thinking everybody knew. But now that I have lived in the city for quite a while, I realize not everybody grew up on a farm. But that's fun, you know, to get to revisit these things in a safe urban space where I'm not ending up, out toiling in the field. And of course, you know, it reinforces to me the myriad differences between farms in Canada and Japan. I never had to deal with a bear attack. Thank frickin' God. In the second series, though, she also gets more comfortable being personal. There's some revealing childhood stories of going to farm school, learning to drive tractors and such, and these are very fun. You get to see a lot of her personality. I just love learning about mangaka that I really respect, because they're so weird. Mangaka, just in general, it's just such a strange career to get into. Just this blend of such a creative, free project of self-expression that demands like the patience and the repetition and the diligence of an artisan, that you're just crafting your story week after week, chapter by chapter. Mangaka are so cool. I would watch an autobiographical thing about literally any mangaka. But then she also gets into some really touching stories. Looking at her parents, looking at her grandparents, this feeling of, as an adult, having realizations about the adults in your childhood that had shaped you, that as a kid you don't really think twice about. You, they're just doing what adults are supposed to. You don't really see them as total and complete human beings. You don't really understand their personalities until you get older and you realize that not everyone's experiences were like yours, and that your parents were just living human beings that were making choices and had personalities and had conflicts and struggles and everything that entire time. I feel like this show, as goofy as it is, as rapid fire as it is, really grasped onto that feeling when she talks about her parents and her grandparents. Her grandmother, there's a chapter about her grandmother passing away, or an episode, that really resonated with me, because I had a grandma too. I had two of them, like everyone does. But my grandma, that was the farmer that grew up down the road from me, passed away around the end of last year. And I spent a long time after she passed away reflecting on like what an amazingly unique human being she was in my life. That she had this like way of life that had been so left behind by modernity. Just living on a farm, growing up on a farm, you know, when she was a kid, they still tilled the field with oxen. Just the amazing developments she had seen, you know, not rushing into an urban setting, but instead seeing changes trickle down to her farm decade after decade. She lived until she was 96. Isn't that insane? And yeah, it really, like, it truly, it resonated with me, and I truly appreciated for the first time, only recently, just how amazing it was for me to know somebody like that, to have somebody like that so much in my life. And then watching this show, I was like, wow, her grandmother was really that type of person too. Even just the little anecdotes about her grandmother's personality, I was like, yeah, I could see my grandma doing that. I could see her saying those things exactly. And you know, a world away in Japan, it's a pretty beautiful, pretty profound thing to think about how the practice of farming, the practice of working and living off the land, just that endless cycle of work, how it unites humans from all around the world and is like a link to all the way back to the prehistoric era of humans, that it hasn't changed that much. Like it's changed a lot, but there are aspects of it that bring you back to the earth just the same as people 300,000 years ago. The same for my grandma and her grandma. Like, I don't know. It really got me. And season 3 is coming too. I'm so excited. It seems like they're just going to keep going on this. There's a lot of manga to adapt. Every chapter is getting an episode. They're only 4 minutes each, but it fits it perfectly. Hooray, hooray. Make some merch too. Give me a Nendroid of her cow Sona, please. I will give this an 8.5. Very, very good. Right, let's talk about Mecha-ude. This is a show that really flew under my radar when I was checking out shows. It seemed very generic. It seemed very whatever. But this makes me really grateful for the anime club, you know? Because we cast a broad net. We have lots of people with different tastes that each kind of have things stand out for them. And a friend of mine who's the one that hosts Anime Club these days is a big mecha fan. And for him, this was a show that stood out. This was a show that was like worthy of really paying attention to and seeing if it was good. And I'm glad he did, because this is a pretty cool thing. This is a true indie animation. It started as a short, I want to say like 6 years ago or more, that then got kickstarted to put together a small team to build this passion project over years and years and years through this funding, that now reached this final form of a full-on 12-episode series, which is like really, really impressive in that alone. Honestly, even if the show like sucked, even if I wasn't enjoying it, I think I would still want to watch it just because that's so unique and that's so rare and so impressive that I would really just want to see like what they were able to do. I just would want to appreciate that. And there's a lot to praise here, and but that's like not ended up what happened. That's not what I ended up having happen. I did enjoy it, and I was impressed, even putting aside this origin. Vibrant, explosive Sakuga, blending raw kineticism, flashy effects, really over-the-top expressive characters, swinging wildly into totally cartoony slapdash animation whenever the mood strikes. The plotline I found just on like a nice sweet spot where it was fairly complex. There was kind of multiple layers of lore. You know, the amnesiac main character, the kind of the successive revelations about the past, every character kind of having some sort of backstory twist, different layers of mystery and conspiracy, trying to work out exactly who is behind this, that's behind that. Multiple power factions as well, with sort of a moral ambiguity, not really being sure as the series goes on who is ultimately going to be the heroes that will support our main characters. At the same time, though, it wasn't really that complicated. It just kind of had only the necessary elements. And what I think made it work a lot better is that the characters stay very compellingly motivated and aligned, that they're always kind of working for something like in the immediate future that's very comprehensible and is like sensible with what you've seen the character do up until now. And that just sounds like storytelling 101. But you'd be surprised at how many anime screw this up and just kind of for the sake of intrigue have it be like, ooh, and now this character is acting strange, and we have no idea why they're doing what they're doing, and we're not going to find out for 8 episodes. And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe that does add some sort of intrigue and some sort of mystery, but now we're kind of like 8 episodes disconnected from that character. That's like 8 episodes of being alienated from that character's motivations and goals. which creates like a real emotional disconnect. You always know who to cheer for. You always know the stakes. There's nothing that's going to trick you on that level. I think that's like very, very important. With a good sense of humor too. I think when there's moments where it's like very tense or very sad, they're very good with the comedic relief to kind of just compel the plot forward. You're never feeling like things are stagnating. It's always kind of on to the next adventure. Sadness. And a really charming weirdness too. The premise of this series, the mechanical arms that affix to your body such that you have like a third arm, and that's like what you fight with, and they do various things. It's like weird. It's clearly like an indie thing. It wasn't designed by a committee. It wasn't designed by people that were thinking about merch first and foremost. It wasn't designed by people who were thinking about like, will kids find this cool? Will it seem like badass? It was designed mostly around just like, I think, a sheer joy and excitement for how these things would move and all the different kind of ideas you can have about these mechanical arms, like all the different forms they can have and stuff. And just like seeing the way Arma, our main arm dude, when he moves around on his own and he's just kind of like flopping like a fish, or he can like kind of pull himself forward by grasping the floor. And just like the way the main character fights, that he like, it's just like jumping around, but then it's the arm on his back that's punching. It's all like really cool, but really cool in like a weird way that nobody would ever think on paper that that should look cool. No one aspect of it looks cool. It's more just like interesting, and the whole thing comes together really nicely. But you can just imagine that, and if there is any committee on this show, if there's anybody thinking about like the long-term franchise potential, at some point somebody would have said, it looks a little goofy having these big arms sprouting out of people's backs and all the fighting being between that. But no, this is the power of independent projects. I think the way I describe it best is that it's somewhere between like a trigger show and a kid's toy tie-in show. And I already explained that no Bandai on this planet would ever greenlight this sort of kid's toy. But that's kind of the mode that it's in. That's kind of the sense of humor and style that it's in. But with the expressiveness and the craziness and the sakuga of a trigger show. And all I can say in criticism of this show, like, I have a lot to say in praise, but the criticism is much more kind of vague and difficult to explain, is that when I put it like that, a kid's show blended with a trigger show, it's not really at that level. Like, that's the closest thing you can compare it to, but it's like 80% of the way there, you know? I can't wholly articulate this in the space that I've given myself. Maybe if I had more time and more slides or whatever. This video is already an hour long though. Oh my god, I'm yapping. I would maybe be able to put my finger on it and break down why this is the case for me, but it's just a little bit sauceless, you know? I think, though, for an independent anime, it's amazing. I really hope they can keep pushing all of their talents in this direction. There's a lot of talent and potential in this team. But yeah, it's good. It's just a little sauceless. Where's my mouse? Hello? Oh, there we go. This is a very illustrative frame. Very good triggery face. This is his big attack. As I said, it looks kind of goofy, but it's good stuff. I'll give it an 8. Finally, let's talk about the latest entries into the Monogatari series. The Off and Monster season. I think it's actually Off season and Monster season. That's my bad. Baby. I'm getting tired. What am I talking about? Oh, baby. Miracle of Miracles. The Monogatari series is back. I never thought this would happen, because Zoko Owari is a perfectly fine ending point. It's like literally the post-credits sequence or the epilogue or whatever of like the entire major arc of the entire series up until that point. So I was like, okay, that's a perfectly fine place to break it off. And then there's all these rumors and some verified facts of inner turmoil at Shaft. A lot of the people that worked on the series up until that point, a lot of the directors and stuff are just not there anymore. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that's it. We had gone 6 years with nothing. But it's back at full power immediately with the most production in all of anime. Let's break it down just a little bit here. All the staples of Shaft building a Monogatari show. The mixed media, the random super detailed sakuga, the patterns, the visual language built up for each arc, each mood, each character, each setting, the composition of every shot, both as encoded conveyance of metatext, but then as a standalone piece of art, every frame truly a painting. And the plot that accompanies that best-in-class production, once again irreverent, perverse, trolling, jumping from totally arbitrary things to significant with just one line, building supernatural triggers to all too real issues, weaving the series lore with mythology, the characters with society, intimate with the universal, all with a heart of limitless empathy, kindness, compassion. This is what people don't get about the Monogatari series. Yes, it's for perverts. It's for perverts by perverts. Yes, it contains all sorts of strange, reprehensible material. But the plot of every single arc is about the value of showing yourself and others empathy and compassion. And that's not an exaggeration. If anything, that is like more true than I can possibly express. It's an understatement of just how important those themes are to the series and how beautiful it is to hear that lesson from all different perspectives, arriving at it through all different means, so many different stories with wildly different setups and characters and settings, all concluding in that same message: empathy, kindness, and compassion. It's good, dude. People don't freaking get it. You know, you can go back and read on my blog now 10 years ago. It's crazy. I made an all-time favorite anime list where I put the Monogatari series at, I think, number 3. Everything I said then is still true. I think even more true as the entries in the series have continued to stack up, just reinforcing these things that I love about it. So what do we get in this run of episodes? Well, we got digging deep dives into 2 major character studies. One is quite familiar, about as familiar as it gets. We take a look at Sengoku and just sort of retread throughout her 4 previous arcs in a very literal form, where her 4 past selves from each arc literally come to life and wreak havoc throughout the town, and she has to track them down and capture them back into the page. She drew them to life. It gives new depth to all of those arcs. It's like a new perspective on each of them that I think kind of fleshes out her character and motivations. Like, it's not that I think Niseo-san has the foresight of like writing one arc and then being like, ooh, and then she'll do this, and then she'll do that, and then she'll do that, and it'll all tie back together and feel like one cohesive character. And as such, some of the earlier arcs, you're like, wow, Sengoku is really different. But by doing this, they thread that so much better with like really gracefully kind of bringing these points together and offering a new perspective that makes you realize, like, yeah, okay, I can see how this same person going through all these different changes will arrive in all of these different states. And this represents an even greater level of healing, where Sengoku is ashamed of her past, she's mad at her past, she has regrets, she did some terrible things, she did some selfish things, she did some understandable things, she did what was right in the moment for her. And the whole thrust of this arc is that she starts to have empathy and even gratitude for all these foolish past selves. She starts to see the value in them. And it's like, wow, what an amazing level of healing. You know, we can talk about self-compassion, but having compassion for even the things that you regret. It's not like you even stop regretting them. It's not like you start feeling grateful that you made the choices you made. You can still wish you had done different things. You can still wish that you hadn't done certain things, but like true healing, I think, is being like, okay, but I get why I did it. I'm not mad at myself. Like, I wish I hadn't done it, but I see why I got to that conclusion. There's nothing wrong with me. There was nothing wrong with me. That's just how it went. What a beautiful message, man. And then after that, whew, a total barrage of the new characters, new situations, insane lore dump, suddenly understanding some of the most significant historical moments in the series timeline, seeing how so many different pieces come together, the feeling of the scope like widening suddenly so huge that the future arcs are now kind of drawing from such a wider pool of potential scenarios. It was like when I was getting caught, like when we watched Zoku Owari, I was like, how does it keep going after this? How is there still like another 12 novels after this, or however many there were at the time? Isn't this everything? Haven't we like tied a ribbon off on everything now? Everybody's done. But yeah, this is what made me understand just how crazy this series might get. Can't wait to see what's next. I hope they keep doing it. I haven't heard anything yet, but if it takes another 6 years, that's fine. Just give me more. Give me more. We'll give this a 9.5 out of 10. Okay. That took longer than I thought. I was like, ooh, I'll keep this one short. I'll just do one slide per series. That won't take long at all. Of course. But we did it. Now I can move on to other videos. Please look forward to other videos. See ya.